Okay, so I'd like to first, what everyone's questions are, right? Like, how do you go from Chicago to HBO and out there, right? So let's start first with the story of Brown Girls. How did that begin?
So I had already made a web series before, like 2 years ago, called You're So Talented. And during that process, Fatima Asghar, who is the writer of Brown Girls, had kind of like, we had, met at different writing bars and scenes in Chicago. And while I was in the second season of You're So Talented, Fatih reached out to me and she was like, I kind of have an idea for a web series. And I was like, cool, write it. And then reach out to me later. Because I was in post-production. And so she did. And in February of last year, she invited me to a reading that Minita was in, playing one of the role of Musrat. And the minute that I was on the second page of hearing it out loud, I wrote in the margins I have to direct this. And then we went through it, and while everyone was leaving, I kind of cornered her, and I was like, I have to direct this, and she was like, great, cool, do it. And so we did. We started pre-production, or early pre-production. Got our team together by June. We're shooting by August. The trailer came out in October, November, and then we premiered in February of this year.
And that was a huge boom. I mean, just the trailer itself took off like wildfire.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you guys got tons of press from the very get-go. Mm-hmm. What's your thought for that? What was it about this project that everyone was like, I have to be a part of this?
I think it's a mixture of it had a very clear idea of what it was going to be about. So, the title, helped that out. But also, we had a lot of different people involved that also had their own, following, right? You're So Talented had already had a following for me as a filmmaker. Fatih has a huge following as a poet and a writer. Jamila Woods, who did all the music for it, has a huge following in the music scene. So all of that, kind of together, kind of made this, perfect soup of, people, wanting to look at the series. And also, I think that Chicago is kind of going through... I'm hesitant to say the word renaissance because I think the work has always been happening. It just now seems like there's a bigger platform for it. So all of that kind of felt like the perfect storm for people to consume it and want to write about it.
And what made you get involved with it?
So I learned about Brown Girls right before the workshop reading. The casting director had reached out to me, and I looked at the script, and it was so great because I think, as an actor of color, specifically as a South Asian actress of color, there's not a lot of scripts that I read that really have a strong, authentic voice. And I read the script, and it was funny and charming and daring, and I really wanted to just go out and do the reading and support this work. I had no idea at the time that it was anything that was going to go into production, so went to the workshop reading, and then I think it was a few weeks later, Sam had emailed me asking me if I'd like to play the role of Nusrat, which I had read for, and I got on board right away. And I have to say that, just on the last question that you asked, I think one of the other reasons that Brown Girls got so much press and so much hype right away is because I think we are, as an audience, are so hungry for this narrative and this story. And I know just from reading it, it was, oh wow, finally this is our story and it's being told in a real way. And the entire cast and crew represented everything that was happening on screen. And that, as an actor, also had a really profound impact on me. And I just realized that I wanted to help bring my community forward, further in the arts, and I think Brown Girls did that.
Well, I think part of it, too, is like you had said, when you wrote it and when you directed it and you decided when you read it, you're like, I don't want a white face on screen, right? This is going to be solely people of color in this, right? And we never, it's beautiful. You never see that.
We kind of wanted to see, in the, where the breakdown of the actors, it said, Fatih had written, none of these characters, or all these characters need to be acted by people of color, actors of color. And then I was kind of like, if we're going to go with the theme of Brown Girls and we're going to actually go there, let's not make any of them people of color, and let's make all of the music from women of color, and let's have almost all the heads of the departments women or people of color. They were all women and people of color and queer people in different intersections of that. And it was very easy to do that. It just we had no idea how it was going to blow up, but we just were like, how do we make this world support the story as much as possible? And that was kind of my goal, just kind of as an experiment to see if it changed anything, if it made the work harder, and it didn't make the work harder at all. It just made it more loving, I think. I think on set.
And I think the other thing, you know, I'm going to speak about Sam as a director for a moment. It was really amazing working with Sam because I think when you have the opportunity to work with somebody who is so detail-oriented and collaborative, it makes a big difference and it impacts the work. And that was something that I really noticed about this process. You know, Sam was talking to all of the actors, asking us about our roles. We had conversations about it. When we got on set, everything was really well organized and put together. We could get there and just do the work and work on connecting with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, everyone was able to bring themselves to the work, and I think you facilitated that kind of environment.
I want to talk about that too, as far as like this kind of collaborative nature of Chicago, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you both have really become grounded artists here, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you were an actress here, and then you decided did the web series and such, and you were in San Francisco, but came here really to cut your teeth in Chicago, right? So, what do you feel is what are the gains by being here?
Just the ability to make shit, right? Like I feel like. That's not, like, I had a meeting with my agents recently out in LA, and they were like, do you feel like you can just, like, hop up and, like, make something real quick? And I was like, no, that's not why I'm here. Like, actually, like, I go to Chicago so I can, like, experiment and make things that I, like, 100% care about. Like, I'm here to, like, make sure that, you know, things are working in the business side, so once we shoot Brown Girls here, everything will be ready. But Chicago, to me, feels just so authentic, and yes, you're going to have to deal with, like, figuring out who your actual collaborators are, because I don't think everyone is everyone's collaborator, but it's just much easier to find that here. There's much, like, many more opportunities for different mediums to kind of cross lines and work with each other. And I think that's just, I think Chicago has a blue-collar way to approaching art, which is kind of like putting your head down and doing the work. There's no reason, you don't come out here to be famous. If you are here to be famous, that's an odd choice. But I think, but I do think that, like, people are here and they just want to work. And I think that's really sexy to me and exciting.
Yeah, and I think, you know, yes to all of that. And, you know, I started off as an actor. My family is all on the West Coast. I went to school on the West Coast. And I started off in the theater, and I think the other great thing about Chicago is, you know, it really taught me not to limit myself as an artist, that I didn't just have to be an actor, you know, that I could start writing. So I wrote this play that I am now doing a world premiere of, and now I have a writing manager for TV and film, and I'm starting to expand myself more, and, you know, you get an opportunity to learn how to produce your own work, and maybe you learn how to direct, and it's so expansive and nurturing in a way that I haven't found in other cities. And I mean, I've never fully lived on either of the coasts, so I can't speak to that out of my own personal experience, but from talking to my friends on the coast, it just seems that it's exactly what you said. You know, you'll run into your friend that's a musician, you'll run into someone that has all the film equipment, you run into someone that's a director, and you guys talk about making something, and then all of a sudden you're just doing it, and then you get it done.
Yeah. Now, how about Motherland, right? So, obviously, I know, fantastic. Tell us about it. Why did you write it? Tell us about Motherland.
So, Motherland is a solo show that I perform, and it's a 90-minute play. I play all of the characters in it, and it's actually an autobiographical story. We're running right now we just extended it through October 14th at 16th Street Theater, and it started, most of the story takes place in 2009 from a trip where I was born in India, and I would go back to visit every once in a while, but in 2009, one of my brothers decided he wanted to get an arranged marriage, which to me at the time was the wildest thing. And so we went, and there were all these magical experiences there, and it was just really tackled and questioned a lot of my ideals about love, about what I really thought was India and what was America, just being back there at that age. And also while I was there, I was assaulted by somebody at a meditation center. And when I came back, I didn't know what to do with all that energy. And I think just being a creative and writing being, I think, the first physical activity I can remember doing, I wanted to write about it. And after I'd healed from the assault in 2014, and this just goes to speak about the Chicago community, Teatro Vista and Second Story were doing a live lit event. So I wrote a 15-minute story. The theme was justice, and I wrote about the assault. And I remember just being able to write about that freed me up to write about all of the other experiences from that trip. And then I found my dad's suitcase from his first trip to the U.S., and he had written this very dramatic thing on the back. It just said, "When I die, discard this bag if you like. Until then, it stays." And I realized that I didn't know my parents outside of being my parents. So I started interviewing them, and then Malik Jelani and Jamil Courier of Silk Road Rising, they took me out to dinner, and they said, "We heard you're writing. Do you want to write?" And I said yes, and they said, "Okay, we'll give you a creative team of your choice and 2 table reads and 4 workshop performances." And I said, okay. And I think that speaks to the magic of Chicago.
Yeah.
I didn't have my play written. I'd never written a play before. And here's a place where you can have an opportunity. Then I did it at Victory Gardens and at Oregon Shakes. And now, I'm thinking about adapting it into a screenplay. And all of that has happened because of Chicago. I'm doing the world premiere of it here. And I got really good writing advice. I said, "How do I write a play?" And someone said, "Don't worry about it, just write." And it was the best advice I'd ever been given. And I think if we follow the story that's inside of us, it will naturally turn into something. So, yeah, that's how Motherland began and what's going on.
Well, I think, too, like one thing you touched on, too, which we talk about a lot with our students, is writing from here, right?
Yeah.
And the difference of writing something that you think somebody else wants versus just telling the story you want to tell. And over again, it feels like that is what keeps coming up, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're so talented. Why? I mean, it's awesome. It's great, too. It's just, it's a love.
Thank you.
So what made you write that?
God, You're So Talented happened, I think, why I read a lot. I was going through a breakup. And also, like, being very frustrated with my acting career. I was doing a play where they asked me to twerk with a gun and a slave costume. And I was like crying, that was horrible. And I had just broken up with my boyfriend. I remember him, like, while we were going to the breakup, he was like, "You're so talented. Well, this isn't working." And I was like, this is all bullshit. This is all like horrible shit. I know I was doing my life.
So that scene is actually like autobiographical a bit.
Yeah. He didn't do it at a play because he too is an actor, so oh my God. So all those I just felt like I was at the lowest I could be, right? I was like, I wasn't doing anything that I wanted in terms of my day job. I wasn't happy with acting. I wasn't happy with like my relationships, and so I just wrote as a way to keep me busy and keep me accountable for creating while I was in between plays. And so I wrote the script. I think I sent it to someone who gave me notes on it, and so then I just started reaching out to people and asking them if they would film it. And I didn't go to film school, right? I was a theater major at Columbia College. I was an acting with an acting focus, and I met these guys who were in the film department at Columbia. And the DP, Mateo Gonzalez, who is my heart, he was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take it. I'm going to bring my camera. Like, I want to do this." And it still didn't really become a thing until he showed up to the first day of set with a grip truck, and I was like, "Oh, this is real." And once the trailer came out, then we opened at Tribeca, we went to the Gotham Awards with it, and it completely changed my life and my trajectory as an artist.
Because then at that point you decided, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, 100%. And then directing Fatih's show really put me in a place where I didn't have to act anymore. I was like, someone told me years ago that you'll know that you're ready to kind of give up acting when you come across a piece of work that you feel like you just have to get it out there. And that's what I felt for Brown Girls. Like, I think it could have been in another world, or I could have been inserted myself into that series, and I was like, no, I just want to facilitate making it and getting it out there, and and that's been really exciting.
Yeah, I was curious because I was like, where is she in here? And you're not in that.
No, and I thoroughly believe I was the only one that could direct that series. And I believe that in my heart, in terms of Chicago and these people and my relationship with Fatih, and so that was more important to me than being in front of the camera.
Okay. So now you're in LA now.
I'm in LA
and
now.
You're transitioning, right?
Yeah.
So what is that like? Why now? What is, other than people are knocking on your door saying you need to come here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was it. I think I was not planning on going to LA. We weren't planning on this it reaching people the way it did, but I got at the end of December, while we were still in post-production, I got an email at the middle of the night from an exec at HBO. And it was like, yo, if you're ever in LA, I would love to like talk to you. I just saw the trailer, seen your work, whatever. And I was like, how did this person get my email? Like, what the hell is this? And so I did. I was out in like Northern California writing another script. And I was like, okay, I'll just stop in LA. And then Fatih and I stayed there for 2 weeks. And then we came back, we did the release, we got representation. And I moved March 5th. We pitched to 9 networks the week of March 6th, HBO being the first one. And then we closed the deal. They put it off.
So where are you in that process right now? Where is all that?
It's in development. Like I think that people development can mean different things to different people, right? I think it's super exciting and really cool that HBO is taking a chance with on us in that situation, but it's still like we are unproven creators, right? So it's going to be a long process, but we just got a showrunner attached to it. But it's good. It's like a lot of outlines, going back and forth with outlines. I'm a non-writing EP on it, which is like exciting to me because like I can just be here as like moral support to Fatih, and then when it gets greenlit, then I'll be crying. But we have a really good team. Our execs at HBO are really amazing, and they've been really championing us, and I think that's really exciting and really cool.
And then will you get a say in who the writer's room is, or do you have like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a really good deal. We like our lawyers really worked it out, so we do have a lot. We have a lot of say in it. And there's obviously some not pushback, but like some. Just like figuring out where do we meet in the middle ground on certain things, but like it's going to be like predominantly queer, predominantly women. We're shooting in Chicago. That's not up for discussion. Like all of that stuff is that's what excited them about the series to begin with. So that's the stuff we're keeping. So yeah.
And then how about you? You're heading out there too.
I am. So after my show closes, I'll probably take a little break to catch my breath, and then I'll be heading out there. And I went out there. Like a month and a half ago, right before my show started going into rehearsals, and I got a writing manager, and she had set up some meetings, so I started having meetings with studios more as a writer, and I just realized that I love Chicago, and I feel like Chicago has helped me cultivate my voice as an artist. There's a lot of things that I want to do here, and I also recognized when I went out there, just with the kinds of meetings I was able to go to, that things are happening at a faster rate out in LA, that I'm probably going to be able to do more of the work that I want to do if I get out there right now. So that's the reason that I'm going. But I think I'll be back and forth a bit because, Chicago has a big heart of an artistic community, and that's important to me. And I do think that, and I know we talked about this a little bit before, I found for myself, and, everyone's artistic journey is absolutely different. I just remember... when I graduated college, I was always looking for what are the right steps to get me to exactly where I want to go. And now, at this point in my career, I realize that there are no right or wrong steps. The best thing that you can do is really listen to that voice inside of yourself. Because if I was listening to that other voice, I probably would have went to LA right away. And I think what I learned is being in Chicago, I cultivated my voice as an actor. I learned more about text. Who I am as a writer really came to full fruition. And now, I noticed when I was out in those meetings in LA, I felt 100% myself. I didn't feel like I had to try to be anything. And I think had I gone out there at a different point in my life, I probably would have been like, oh, well, what are they looking for? What do they want? What can I pitch that's right? Or, the same way I would be with acting auditions when I was fresh out of school. What's the right choice I can make for this director? And now I'm like, how can I create this role? So I think that's something that Chicago really offered me, and that's probably something I just really want to throw out there. I think the best thing that anyone can do for themselves is learn who you are as an artist and what your voice is, and that's the thing that makes you an artist. It's not whether you're consistently working, because there are times where you're not working, and that's okay, but that doesn't make you an artist or break you as an artist.
How do you get through those times? Like the time when you're not working?
I think it's different, right? What am I a working artist, or am I getting paid to? Like, there's a different thing, right? Because I do think that it is your job to be creating regularly, right? So if there's something, I'm in between directing gigs, and but I'm not. I remember calling student financial loans, and they're like, so when can you pay back? And I was like, well, they're like, oh, do you have a job? And I was like, well, I just sold a show to HBO. They're like, so you're unemployed? And I was like, yeah, I am unemployed. I am unemployed until we get on set, and that's gonna go. So I can't find my validation through like getting a gig. I have to actually continue to be like writing and creating stuff and working with the artists that I want to, or like reading my friends' works and giving notes, and vice versa. That to me constitutes a working artist, and I've had to learn how to get myself out of those really dark moments, and they always come from when I'm not creating, when I'm not reading, when I'm not writing or watching. You should always be consuming art, especially when those days that it's hard to make it. I think it's your job then to consume it. If I can't pick up the pen today, then I better be watching something on Netflix. That's even because that's your research. That's your bread and butter. So I think that's really important to continue to stay active in some way. The work will come, the money will come. Like I believe that 100%. But you have to like make your own definition for what a working artist is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel similarly. Downtime is always this strange thing to juggle. And I think for me, there's probably 3 things that keep me going. One is my spirituality. I think that's really, for me, I found just having faith and, knowing that you're part of something greater, that it's not always just about, you, that it's about the stories you want to tell, what's going on in the world, and having something that you can come back to, a practice that grounds you, and that can be anything at all. Secondly, I think, family and friends. So knowing who your people are, who is your tribe, I would say that is really important. Just knowing who you can call, who you can, throw out that idea to, who you can exchange notes with, and who you can just chill out with and not talk about the work. Because I think that is really important. Have something else that's going on in your life that moves you. And then the last thing, I think, is just enabling some healthy practices that are outside of the work, whether it's, and I know it's really hard, don't get me wrong, like it's not like I've never, eaten really crappy, like fiery hot Cheetos all night or something like that, but, just making sure that you're taking good care of yourself, because when you're not feeling good, what you put into your body, I think that really matters. Yeah. So just making sure you're eating well, or those days where you don't want to get out of bed because you're feeling bummed out, having a film that you can go to, watching Netflix at home, just forcing yourself to have a half-hour writing practice in the morning, or watching something that inspires you. I think that having those, whatever it is, 2 or 3 things that I'm having a bad day, I don't feel like my work is going anywhere, but what just makes me feel good, right? We don't get rewarded, right? We're in a different kind of profession. So we'll put our heart and soul into something, and nobody is going to automatically walk up and give us that pat on the back or promote us. So what's going to make you feel good? I think those things.
Crying in the shower helps a lot. Yeah. Sitting on the floor crying in the shower.
I didn't really have that in common until you sit on the floor.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah.
So when you guys were first starting out, right? You're students and you're coming out of school and such, like what stuff did you work on? Like, what were the things, like, you were, like, saying, like, oh, my God, I got this horrible offer of this role, and you're like, I'm going to kill myself now. So what are those things that you, like, started to work on, and how you chose them, eventually?
I mean, that was when I did everything. Like, I didn't understand the power of no, because I was told as an actor, you can't say no. Like, that was, like, so it took me to that point to be like, oh, I'm actually being disrespected. This is not a safe space. And in between, graduating from college, and getting there, there's a lot of shitty work that I did, and I think I had to go through that because I wanted to learn that actually what I liked about theater and acting was the ensemble and the community. And so, but I had to learn not to conflate that with actually like being an actor. I didn't enjoy. I was kind of quieting my voice of like wanting to be a leader in the room, because it was like, oh, you can't do that. You'll be considered difficult to work with if you do that, like all that stuff. So actually what I was doing was making a lot of mistakes and taking a lot of like really shitty jobs for like no money, and hating myself and drinking and all that stuff that happens like after college. And it took me like really to get to like a lower space and be like, actually, you used to write, like why don't you do that anymore? And like actually, I think Tangerine had just came out around that time, so I was actually going to shoot You're So Talented on an iPhone. And it just happened to be that Mateo, had access to cameras, and that's what we did, and it just changed my life. But I think that I needed that space to really, just like not do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yes, failure is your best friend. It's not always going to feel good, but you make choices and you fail and then you learn from them. And I think when I graduated from college, it was, what I was saying before. I wanted to do what was right. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought there was a specific path. And I think also when I graduated from college, there weren't really a lot of great roles. And I know it's starting to change now, but we still have a long way to go. There weren't a lot of great roles for women of color. Mm-hmm. So I was just, so eager to play. Like, I mean, if you look at some of the TV that I've done in Chicago, man, I've been like a lot of reporters and a lot of ER doctors. And, and it took me a while to learn how to say, wait a minute, what's the kind of art that I want to create? What are the projects that I want to be a part of? And the power of no is incredibly important. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you don't have to sacrifice your integrity at any level to be an artist and to survive in this business is important. And so, really think about what you want to do and what your trajectory is. And there are going to be times where you're paying your dues, you're working a lot for free, and you're gaining that experience. And I think that is important, but I think it's about finding your voice. And yes, failure is key. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I'm still making mistakes all the time, and I think that's important. I think the bigger thing is knowing that you don't have to beat yourself up for the mistakes that you make. That, what can I learn from this and move forward? And the other thing is, if you don't like the stories that are being put out there, make your own. Mm-hmm. That's something I really learned with Motherland. It wasn't until I played, all the characters that I play in Motherland that I realized that maybe there's only like 3 or 4 roles in the past that I have felt really good about in terms of the storytelling arc of my character. Mm-hmm. I just said yes to work, to work at, certain theaters or certain production companies or whatever it might be. And, we all deserve better than that. And so don't be afraid to create it and put it out there. And I think, Brown Girls is a great example of that. I think Motherland is a great example of that. I think there's a lot of things that are coming up in Chicago and that have been coming up that are great examples of that. So, it's just taking that leap and not being scared. Mm-hmm.
Well, you were talking last night, too, and we were talking about how you feel, you were talking about like the limited roles of women in color, right? Mm-hmm. And that you feel, obviously, there's some momentum behind this finally to change that. But, how do you sense that it's still, like you said, open the door and hurry up and get in there, right? Because you don't know how long this is going to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it feels like a trend. And that's like really like sad to say, but I don't care. I mean, I think that's like the reality of the world that we live in. I think there's a lot of pushback, and I think with social media being part of the lexicon of all the conversations, I think people want to say like, oh, we're just gonna, we're just put this person of color in front of the camera, but there's actually not a lot of work being done behind the camera, which we know as artists that if the people telling the story don't reflect the story that's being told, there's a disconnect there, right? And I think that's still happening. I'm about to join the DGA, and out of like 13,700 active directors, there's about 80 black women.
Wow.
That's it, right? So yeah, I do feel like it's a trend, and I feel but I think that they think it's a trend, cool. They were going to act like it's a trend, cool. So while the door is open, as many of us as can get in, let's get in. Like, let's do that. Because I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, the reason why Hollywood looks the way it is because people were like, oh, you look like me, so I'll give you a choice. These are execs. I know people that are 25 that are like white straight men that are execs for no reason and don't do anything and don't bring in talent with no reason. But the guy that's up head was like, that guy looks like me. He reminds me of something. Right. So let's do the same now. Like let's do that now because we have to change what it looks like. Behind the camera, and the majority of America doesn't know that. They actually don't know who the decision makers are. They just see that, oh, this show has a lot of black and brown people. It's one show. There's like over 500. There's 550 something shows on TV, streaming and broadcast. And then we can count on our hands how many are like super diverse. But the fact that we can name 10, we're like, whew, that's a lot. That's 10 out of 550 shows. That's ridiculous. And so I just don't want anyone to get like lost in thinking that things have changed fully. They haven't. And if you look in the history of TV, this shit ebbs and flows. It goes like 10 years ago, like in the 90s, there was a big boom of like black television, and then it was gone until like Shonda came back. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to like look at that and kind of know the history of the industry that you're going into. and look for the women and the people of color and the queer people and the open-minded, good, gentle white people that also like that will have the door open for you too, because I think that's what happened with me and Fati. We like once we came out, I feel like all the execs of color and women and queer people were like, we're going to take care of you guys. Yeah. Like we want to make sure that you guys like meet the right people, and we've been like taken care of really, really well and like in a really cool way. But yeah, that's kind of what I think it is.
Dude.
I mean, yes to all of that, and I think that, I mean, I don't know, I do think that it is a trend. I also think that, you know, within that, you know, with all people are going to come out and help you if you put yourself out there. I think something that's really important, if you don't have a mentor, I think getting a mentor is really important. And maybe find someone with your own experience or your background if there's something you want to get into. I think that helps because I think that's part of it, right? And I mean, we feel that, oh, this person is reaching out to someone because they have a similar dynamic or they feel for you or for your story. And if that's the way in, that's the way in. But I think it's important to have someone to guide you, one person that you can really just say, I don't know what's going on. This is the first time I'm pitching. I don't know how to do it. Can you talk to me? Someone that you can trust. I think just finding that person or those people that you can trust to help you, you know, gain your voice and get more knowledge is really important within the industry the way that it is now. Because think about it, the more that we do that, the more that we're all kind of rising to the top to these leadership positions, and then we're able to cultivate a truly diverse environment that represents the world that we live in.
Well, I think that's what we talked about too, of just like it's finally people have ascended to those places and they can finally start opening doors, right? But it's a matter of continuing to do that. It's not, like you said, not just a trend to do it one time.
Yeah, to continue doing it and to cultivate that, like, you get up to a certain place, then you put your hand back and you bring somebody else up, and I think that's really important. And I think that like, because there's only been a small amount, and I'm talking about like execs in the world of people of color and women, when you're like the only one in the room, then you think that your spot can be taken from you, right? So like there's just now this kind of like idea of like, oh, that's not real, and that's something that we've been taught to believe to like keep us the only one in the room, right? And now there's just much more of an idea, and it makes me like cautiously optimistic about the future in that way. I think there's a lot more people who are like, oh, not only am I not going to be the only one in the room because that's like shitty feeling, but like let me just bring other so that we can totally take over. Brown Girls was like a bunch of women and people of color and queer people behind the scenes, and no one was the only one. And I think that's really important because to be the only person in a room is really difficult, and you don't ever want to feel like the diversity hire for things. And that's like the whole diversity trend and word is like a whole nother thing that I think is really upsetting to me, mostly because it takes us out of our communities and makes us like the token, and that's really upsetting. And that's why I think it's really important to keep bringing people along with you as you move through this industry and this world, and you know, making the work that like speaks to that community as well.
I have two things on that. You know, one is there's this wonderful woman, Indra Nooyi, who's the COO of PepsiCo, and I think she's a really, really inspirational woman, and she talks about, you know, she tells the story about, and it's about women helping women, and she talks about how, you know, if, I'm going to just paraphrase the story, but if, you know, Jane does a presentation, it's not going that well, you know, at the break, she goes to the bathroom, and maybe, you know, some of the women in the bathrooms, they do either one of two things. One, they were like, oh, it's great, it's going so wonderful, or the other thing, they go, hey, you know what, you need to just speak a little louder, we can't hear you in the back, and maybe gesture more. And she goes, oh, that bitch. Right? So that happens. But then a man gives a presentation and it's not going that well. And, you know, he goes to the bathroom, and, you know, maybe some of the men in the room are like, hey, you know, it's actually not going that well. Could you gesture more, raise your volume? And they like fist pump and walk out, and it's cool. And she talks about how women need to help other women. And I think we can apply that to, you know, the larger scope of a disenfranchised group of people that, for whatever reason, when you're part of that disenfranchised community, we function out of a place of scarcity, as though there is only this one job. There is, you know, and if I recommend Sam for something, then is that taking away something for me. And the truth is, no, it's not. And it's just opening our minds to function from a place of abundance. So I think that's really important, is just creating that mind shift that you're talking about. And the other thing is, you know, because there are, right, we can name like those 5 or 10 shows that are out there right now that maybe are diverse. I think the other thing is not to feel as though, similarly, that, oh, there's that one, or, you know, there's that one black show, there's that one South Asian show, you know, they told the story already. No, they didn't. Just think about it. We all have our own different, unique stories. So we want to remember that it's great, and we want to push those things forward and advocate for them, and then know that our own story is different, right? Because not the entire Indian community is not one community. The entire black community is not by one person. And I don't know about you, but I often feel as though when I'm going in to talk about something, I sometimes feel like, oh, people are looking at me as though I speak for all women, all Indian women, all Indian American women, you know, all sexual assault survivors. And I'm like, this is just me and my experience and my opinion. So I think that's just important to keep in mind when we're telling our stories.
Yeah. Well, I think we were talking about it last night, that there's a fear of, like, we were talking about, like, oh, like Brown Girls is out, so now we can't do a story about, like, a South Asian queer person. Or, like, you know, Insecure is out, so now we can't talk about, like, young black women and that. And, like, literally, that you're going to have that feeling over and over and over again. Like, I am in development at HBO. Do you not think that most of my notes come about based off what Insecure is? Like, that's seriously. And I'm like, this is a totally different world. It's different age brackets. All these things that you think are obvious, but it's not, because they don't understand. They do think that, like, oh, Issa Rae is the voice of the black female generation. And it's like, she's a voice, right? Like, she's a voice in that. And, like, and we should talk about, like, instead of there being one person that moves in, it should be like I talk about, like, the Avengers of, like, millennials, like, how many people are actually going to be at the table. And I think that's, like, really exciting. But they don't understand that. We do. We know that we're not talking about every single person, and if you feel like you are, you should probably take a step back, because I don't think your writing is going to be that great if you are trying to speak for an entire community. But I think that, like, reminding yourself that there is room enough at the table specifically for, like, women and people of color and queer people, because our stories have not been told enough. One of the things I love about Brown Girls is that the queer lead is not tormented. She's not tortured. Right? Like yes, she's that awesome. Exists, but she gets to be, you know, she gets to go come out to her sister, and it's okay, which exists as well as the others. Like, those exist too. They just all have to be able to, like, actually have the shine and get their stories heard, and I think that's exciting.
And people are going to come back and have different opinions about that. I mean, I think sometimes with Motherland, the most interesting thing for me is the talk back afterwards. You know, it's really interesting, because we'll get all kinds of a very wide demographic coming to the show, and then afterwards almost everyone stays for the talk back. And some of the questions I get, and I feel very much like I am Indian American. How many of you are first generation anything out there? You know, there's a lot of first generation experience, first and second generation experience, and it's different. And so sometimes I'll get people that come to the play and they say, oh, I was expecting sort of like the Indian play. I wasn't expecting you to be so American up there, or I wasn't expecting you to be so Indian up there. And I always think that's really fascinating. So people are going to have their own perspectives, but I think, we all keep coming back to what is your story. I think, you know, Anna, you talk about, like, what's the story that you want to tell? Why do you want to tell it right now? I always think those are two good questions to ask. Why do you want to tell your story right now? Because sometimes we think we have to tell a story because it fits a certain thing that someone's looking for, and I don't know. I don't think that's ever the best reason to tell the story.
No. And as you talked about, like, so many of your characters, the characters on Brown Girls, I mean, they're human. I mean, they're just human. They're beautiful. I mean, Layla is, I think, she's one of my favorites, like, ever, you know, and as opposed to, like, you know, this is how you have to fit this way, right? So, you know, you're just writing a human being, right? Yeah,
and I think that's a testament to Fati. I mean, it is the most, like, biggest testament to Fati, because that's what drew me to the script, you know? It was like, I was like, oh, the minute you are literally putting a bunch of people of color in a room and allowing them just to be people. They're mediocre, they fail, they succeed, they are shitty, they're awesome, like all of that stuff that I think white people have been doing for decades upon decades upon decades.
Yeah.
But like because of that, then we've been put into a box of like you can only be the thug, or you can only be the sassy person, or you can only be like the the Michelle Obama. There's all these weird like saints and sinners that we've been put into. That's like really sad to me. And as a writer, I'm not turned on about it at all. I'm very bored about those archetypes. And so the reasons like when Fati wrote that script and I read it and I hear it out loud, I was like, this is perfect, and this is all I'm interested in, especially at that moment. All I'm interested in is exploring these type of characters and these people, because there's not enough of it. There's not enough of us being like flawed humans in those representations.
And I think during the workshop reading, you could really feel it in the room. There was and from the workshop reading to the set, there was just this sort of innate joy, throughout the entire production process of Brown Girls. It was just. And I remember as an actor just feeling like my shoulders sort of, because I was like, oh, I just get to go in and, play someone in the world that feels very real. And like, this feels like someone I could be, like I felt like this is like a real relationship with my sister. I didn't have to put on an accent or try to force some, South Asian thing on it that didn't want to be there. Because that's not who we are when we're raised here anyways. We're here and we speak like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. But we have to go to Q&A now. I could still talk to you guys forever. So for the students, you go for the Q&A time.
Hi, my name is Akram Shibli. I'm a Muslim American filmmaker, and I have to say both of you are very, very inspiring, giving me a lot of hope. So over the past few years, I've been working, as an independent. So I'm accustomed to the sense of creative control, that I can write my story, tell my story, produce my story the way I want it. And one thing that my community fears, and especially my mom, she tells me, when you get to Hollywood, they're going to exploit you. They're going to take your story and they're going to shift it in the way they want to tell it. So I'm wondering, as you're moving up and all this great success is coming your way, do you sense that there is any type of exploitation of your narrative? And if not, how would you advise that people of color maintain the integrity of their voice while at the same time making it marketable to the mass audience that Hollywood wants? Thanks.
That is a really good question. I think one, your job is not at all to make anything marketable. That's someone else's job. So I would free myself of that burden. And in terms of people taking advantage of you, I mean, they could. I haven't had that experience because I think I was told really early on that Hollywood responds really well to confidence. Right? So if I'm in a room and I'm like, well, this is what it is, and this is the story it is, and this is the story it's not, I know it better than they do. These people are not creative people. The reason why they're behind you and wanting to buy from you or whatever is because you have a voice that they do not have. So I just try to take up space when I'm in a meeting, and I'm really I'm trying to be a lot more proactive about that, because I think even in the beginning of my pitching, I was very apologetic for being in the room. Thank you. Oh my God, sorry that I'm taking up your time. It's no, they want this. They want you to be the solution to their problems, which is that their stuff is old and that they don't have any cool different ideas. You're that solution. So just you kind of have to take up space and be this is what it has to be. There are certain things that we will have a give and take on, but in terms of telling the story and telling the story the way you want it to be told, you are the authority of that. They are not. And so I think knowing that and reminding yourself of that while being a good person, I think that's. But I don't think confidence is a bad thing, and I think you have to kind of puff your chest out a little bit when you're in those rooms.
I think, yes, say no to what you want to say no to, take that space. And I think something that's really key that I have definitely been learning over the past couple of years is know what your boundaries are, know what your absolute deal breakers are before you go into a process. So when it comes up at the beginning and you're starting to do contracts and all of that no, I really want this person attached to it, or no, just know what you want in that story. I think knowing your deal breakers is key, and really establish that for yourself spiritually before you go into the process.
Yeah, and get good representation. Yeah. If you get to that point and you ask your friends who's representing them, because then you don't have to have the like hard conversations. That's their job. You just focus on the art.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh, you have a whole line. This is awesome.
Hi, I'm Kayla. So my question, I think as like queer people of color, and especially queer people of color who present as female, like we constantly get these like comments about like, oh, what's your story? You have such an interesting perspective. Like, you know, tell us blah blah blah. And I think like there's definitely power in telling our stories because only we can tell them, and that's something that's beautiful and like important. But I think like, what do you do like if you just want to tell a story? Like I think like there's just this idea like, oh, like you're such a token, like you have such an important voice. Mm-hmm. But like I don't know, sometimes I just want to like write a story, you know, and have it not all the characters of women or not all the characters of people of color. Yeah. And like for some reason, I don't know, like I'm writing a script right now and all the feedback I get from a lot of people are just like, why aren't these characters women? Why aren't they people of color? And I'm just like, because like I just want to tell a story, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think like that's like it could be perceived as like internalized racism or internalized queerphobia, but like I just want to sit down and write a story. You know what I mean? So like, what do I do with that? Or like, what would you do with that?
I think you gotta listen to yourself and tell the story you want to tell with the characters that you want to write into your story. And you know, if the characters are from you, they are from you. And if you need to check in with a certain community for authenticity reasons, like make sure you do that homework. I think that's really important. But I think it's, you know, just because, you know, Sam is a black woman and I am an Indian American woman, like those aren't the only stories that we have to be able to tell, and you don't have to tell, you know, only the stories of who you are. I think that's bullshit.
I think that like I definitely, my issue probably more is that like I don't like talking about it. You know, I feel like that's constantly a conversation of like, well, explain the black experience. Like that, that I don't want to do, but I'm not, I do feel a responsibility to put black people on in front of the camera.
Oh, for
but
sure.
I don't think that means that like they should be about being black. Right. Like I think it should just be, these people are just a vessel to tell the story, whatever story I want to tell. And you're seeing more and more, it's happening very slowly, but you're seeing more people, like Dee Rees is just announced that she's doing an adaptation of a Joan Didion book. There's another black woman who did like the behind the stories of the making of Wonder Woman, which is an all-white cast. Yeah. So I'm like, there's a little bit more of that, and I think it's just like not being apologetic. Don't bring it up. Don't let it be a point of conversation. They give you those notes, ignore them.
Right.
Like, what are the notes that you want to hear? Because really, what is going on? Someone told me recently is like find the confusion, ignore the solution when you get notes. So like I'm not asking for your like what you think I should do. I'm listening for where you're confused in the story. And if the confusion is why they don't understand why you're not talking about a queer person, you can disregard that and keep it going. Like I think it's really kind of like cementing yourself as to like, this is what I want, this is what I need to do, this is what I'm going to do, this is what turns me on as an artist, and there's no one else in this room that can dictate that for you except for you.
Right. And also like I think on the topic of like, you know, how you guys were talking about like, you know, these stories are like a hot topic. Like women are in, queer people are in. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's just so gross and frustrating because I feel like it limits a lot of like queer creators and like creators of color. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, I know that it's frustrating. I'm sure you get these comments too. I'll always get comments like, oh my gosh, you have to go to LA. You're Indian American and you're a woman. You're totally gonna make it. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, lack of talent. Like if I was shitty at my job, I wouldn't be getting any. Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so I'm an animation major. In a lot of my classes, I am the only woman of color, person of color, just woman in general. And for me, like the neutral or like the standard is like a black woman would be my main character in my stories. But like my classmates don't necessarily understand, or they're like, why do you have to make it political? So it's just like, how do you like, and you had to like pitch to like TV executives who are like a majority white men. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do you let them understand or make sure that they know that like your identity is valid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean it's shitty that you even have to ask that question, and like it's like really sad to me that like the idea of having a black character means that it's a political thing. And so, I mean, once again, I figure out things that are not up for debate. It's a black person because I said it was. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think we have to, like, stop giving people room to comment on the work that we're making. If you want to comment on like, how big the character is in the drawing, like, then let's have that conversation. But I'm not having a conversation as to why this character is a person of color or not. And I think drawing that in that line in the sand earlier will make the questions stop happening, because that's what you decide to do as an artist.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is T. Will. I'm a grad student here at DePaul, MFA in directing. And I just want to, this question is for Sam. First of all, I think that you guys are dope. And the series is dope. But I want to apologize because I actually just started watching the series. I had heard a lot of buzz about the series, but I just started watching it last night, so I want to watch like a couple of episodes. But trust me, I'm going to probably binge watch the rest of them today. But my question to Sam is, well, to both of you, is that the series, with the HBO contract that you all have, are you going to continue the series from where it left off, or are you going to, try to rewrite or refresh what you've already done, for your first season on HBO? And my second question is a director's question. I noticed that in a couple of episodes that you have these long takes. And I believe that there's some kind of maybe a 2-camera setup as well. Mm-hmm. Is this a personal preference? Because I think that it's dope, what you're doing. But is that a personal preference, or is it more of a production kind of situation?
Definitely personal. I think like You're So Talented also has these very long takes of just us setting up the frame and kind of giving them the parameters to play around with. I think if you have good actors, I like watching them play in the space and not cutting around a lot. So yeah, that was done on purpose. And then when we did do the 2-camera stuff, I do think like the day we shot your scene, your episode, we had 2 cameras. Yeah. And that was done because specifically that day I think we did like an 8-hour day of shooting. So we had to like get those kind of quickly, but also like Nabila was a newer actor, so if she was going to be reacting to Minita in any way, I didn't want to lose it. So that's why we shot on 2 cameras and cross-shot that.
Yeah, okay. We did that in like 3 I remember it being just like really fast.
Yeah, pretty quick. But that's like we had so much material because we cross-shot that. In terms of the HBO series, it is a series based off the web series. It's based off that world. It's not the recreating of the series. There are some, as where it is right now, there are some characters that you'll see that were in the web series that are now in the TV show, but it's not fully the same thing.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Oh, hi.
Hey.
Hi, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Lewis. I'm an animation major with a digital cinema minor here at DePaul. And I had a question. To kind of put it in perspective, when I heard you guys speaking about having like the liberty of like not being constrained to like racial norms and stuff, it started to like make me think of just like my kind of upbringing as a English-speaking third-generation Mexican American, who necessarily didn't come from like the kind of marginal like poverty that typical Latinos face. Mm-hmm. And with that kind of being said, I had a question: is there like any time you guys ever faced any type of like I don't know how to put it, like unrelatability in your kind of intersectionality or like upbringing that you were either nervous about presenting that would be viewed as kind of unsympathetic or like not marginal, and how did you overcome it?
That's a good question. God, I mean, I think I don't know how you feel about this, but every time I'm writing stuff, I'm constantly thinking, like in You're So Talented, the main character is I remember we had cast the love interest. It was 3 different guys. At first it was an older white guy, then it was a younger black guy who actually plays Victor in Brown Girl, so we were shot. And then it ended up being this Latino actor, Gabe Ruiz. And he was amazing. It was like a very great, like the characters had really great chemistry. But when it came out, I remember people being like, well, what are you trying to say about interracial dating? And like, why is she not with a black man? And da-da-da-da-da, and all this other shit. And I was like, man, all I was trying to say was that it happens, you know? But I still, when I'm writing characters and I'm thinking about the storyline, there is, like, I live a very bohemian artist life. Like, my friends are a bunch of different types of people who, you know, are a bunch of burlesque dancers and drag queens and all this stuff that we all, but that's the world that I live in. I know that those stories actually haven't really been told. People don't understand that. They don't understand black women that kind of like work in that area and kind of like navigate that world. And so when I'm writing work, I'm constantly, in directing and casting and all that stuff, I do have to tell myself to get rid of like being worried about how I cast or how I write certain characters, because I'm like, oh, am I going to get shit for this character being white or this character being Latino or this, like all of that stuff are things that I worry about. And it takes a while. Like, it'll take a couple drafts. Like, I find myself, like, I always like write what I want to write, and then I edit to what I think the audience wants, and then I have to get myself back to that. Like that, that happens like all the time, and it's really like it's upsetting, and it's something that I don't think that like our white male counterparts have to deal with, but we have to juggle so much in terms of like telling our stories in a way that feels authentic to us. And you know, I'm never going to tell you the story of like of growing up in like Cabrini Green in Chicago. That's my dad's story, but it's a story I don't know, and I'm not like, I don't understand. That's not my experience. And not to say that you can't tell that story if you want to, and it's not your experience. You can. It just doesn't turn me on to tell you that. I don't feel like good about it. But it is a burden that I think that like is unfair. But I think that if you have a story that's not the typical story, the typical Mexican American story, then it's actually, you have a responsibility to tell it, because the reason why there's a typical Mexican American story is because people are putting us in those boxes. So it's actually like your job to change that a little bit by being like, oh yeah, that exists, as does this too, you know?
Yeah, I think that's something, you know, we're like a society of swipe right, swipe left. We make really fast judgments, right? Yeah. Just based on the way somebody looks, about, you know, who they are, how much money they make, where they came from, all those things. And people are absolutely going to do that in the realm of us being artists. And, you know, I think I faced a lot of that with Motherland. You know, just, it starts off and it's more of a comedy than anything else. And sometimes people have issues with the fact that I talk about sex so openly in the play, as though Indian women don't have sex ever. I mean, like, I didn't know. Obviously, that's been happening, because there's a lot of us. But, you know, so there's things like that. And if I think what we have to do is just kind of, you know, say, screw it to those voices. I mean, that was a kind way to put it. I don't know. You know what I mean? But just like, those voices are going to be there. And I think, I don't know about you, but something that I felt was pressure on myself. Oh, what is my family going to think when I write this thing? Or what is my community going to think when I write this thing? But if you're not writing in your own voice, what's the message that you're really putting out there, right? Like, I think the reason that we fall in love with the stories that we fall in love with is because they are a little bit dangerous, or a lot dangerous. They take that risk. They say the things that we think that we don't always say out loud, right? So that's what you have a gift for, is like giving that gift to the world and giving that gift to the community, so people can be like, yeah, that is me, and I can relax because now I can see myself and the things that I don't want to talk about out loud, and that might start creating some really important conversation.
Yeah. Do you know how many like nerdy black guys are so happy that Donald Glover exists? like they can breathe because he existed and did his story. Like, oh God, that's my story too. Thank God. And now there's like a bunch of web series about like awkward black guys happening right now because of him. So there's probably someone just waiting for you to tell your story so that they can say that it just validates our experiences, you know?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Last question.
Hi, this is a question for Sam. In developing the series, how has the prospect of an HBO budget started influencing creative decisions in kind of stepping up from a web series? Would the series have more locations or more actors, the kinds of things that people have to work around with sometimes because of doing things indie?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, the sky's the limit, right? HBO. But I mean, there will most definitely be more locations because we cut locations because of our budget, which was very, very small. But like the heart of the story is the same. So what's amazing about having a network like HBO behind it is just that like I don't ever have to care or worry about what the budget is. Because one, I'm used to working on such a small, like Brown Girls cost $20,000 from beginning to end. I think that's like maybe one snack on Crafty on HBO, you know, like that's not an issue. So like that's very like to be able to breathe and also know that like hopefully we get to bring people in from from this community and then the people that have been doing work for like very little money actually get their dues and get to be able to like pay them their what they're actually worth. All of that's really exciting to me. I don't think it's going to change. I'm just gonna be able to, but I've worked on a Red camera. I've worked on like a Sony A7S too. Although like I've worked on nice cameras, so it's not, or worked with nice cameras. So that's not gonna like make me feel too crazy. It's just like knowing that everyone's taken care of. Mm-hmm. That's really exciting. It's not gonna change the story much. I don't think, because literally, if we had $5,000 more, we would have shot in all the locations we meant to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, this is really just making sure that everyone gets paid. Everyone like, it's just much more of a smoother process, and the food is really good.
Are you bringing most of the
Yeah.
Are you bringing most of the pieces of the cast at all, or you don't know?
We're so early on, we don't know yet.
Yeah. How about your music? If you haven't watched it, I mean, I think the music is amazing.
I think Jamila is like on to do it. Yeah. If everything goes right, that was also a selling point to have her kind of be the music supervisor for the series. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.